Hey, here's some shocking statistics. 76% of companies will be forever remote on-site hybrids permanently after the pandemic. 96% agree that remote workers are at a disadvantage compared to on-site workers. And 92% of executives think that workers who turn cameras off during Zoom meetings do not have long-term futures at that company. Wow, does that have a ton of implications? Let's get after it right now.
This is The Rare Advisor, proud to be a part of the Advisor Advancement Network and home of a business model supercharged by recurring and repeatable events. Your host is Mike Walters, CEO of USA Financial. He is an investment advisor representative of and securities are offered through USA Financial Securities, member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor.
Hey, I've got something a little interesting, a little off the beaten path to talk to you about here on The Rare Advisor. I'm going to talk to you as a parent. I'm going to talk to you as a business owner. I'm going to talk to you as a 56-year-old. I'm going to talk to you as someone who manages people. In fact, I would encourage you, if you have young adult children, college-age children, have them watch this particular video. They might not like what I'm about to share, but it's the reality of the situation, and everyone has to adapt to it. You know, sometimes they say the problem with common sense is it's not very common anymore. Well, there are stats and data and facts that are coming out of the pandemic and the push that has taken place economically to forcing us all into these remote environments. And it boils down to certain key factors if you want to get ahead in business. If you want to be successful in business, if you want to be successful in your career, if you want to be successful in sales. And it comes down to this simple point. Stop turning off your Zoom camera. Seriously, think about it. Stop turning off the Zoom camera. If you were in a live face-to-face meeting, would you turn your back on the other person? Ignore them? Go dark on them physically? Of course not. You would never in a million years consider that. Video is closer to a personal appointment because you are physically looking at each other, having a conversation. That's why Zoom has taken off during the pandemic. It's brought us together in ways that telephones and conference calls could not do. Don't treat Zoom like it's a phone call, because it's not. Treat it like it's an appointment, a face-to-face appointment, because that's what it is. That's its value. That's its curse. You could get away with things on the phone because people couldn't see what you were doing. If you do that in Zoom by turning off the camera, everyone will assume the absolute worst about what's going on and why you turned off the camera. There's a bunch of articles. We'll put the links out there for you. Let me just read you some of these stats. 92% of executives at medium to large firms think that workers who turn off cameras during meetings do not have long-term futures at that company. Those who choose to work from home, some, most, or all the time, are considered out of sight and out of mind for many bosses. So they talk about the fact that 93% of executives said that people who frequently turn off their cameras probably are doing so because they're not paying attention. Those employees are perceived as less engaged in their work overall, less engaged in the conversation, less engaged in the work. So it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's the perception that is the overlying dominant issue and concern here. Now, the majority of companies around the world are moving to a hybrid work model. So this is not going away. This is going to become the new norm. In fact, it already is the new norm. So we've got more videos in our future. More of this is going to be coming at us. This is going to become how we're doing business. And they talk about the fact that the casual, camera off and or microphone muted way of taking a meeting is actually harming people's careers now. Now, I will tell you, this is personal conjecture here. I will tell you that if I'm in a conversation with somebody and I can see them, the camera's on, but they mute because they're coughing or they're not the one doing the speaking or there's multiple people, and if you get too much, you got background noise. I get that. Turning off the mute, leaving the camera on, personally, I think that's totally acceptable. Turning the camera off, leaving the mute off so that you're talking with the camera off, not a cool thing. People are going to assume not the greatest stuff about you. Turn them both off, dead in the water. The assumption of what's going on your end of the scenario is going to be nothing but negative against you. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about meetings, small group meetings, one-on-one meetings, things where you're expected to be 110% engaged. Now, if you are attending a digital conference, hundreds, thousands of people on the line, that's the time to turn that stuff off. That's a different deal. But when you are having an interaction with someone, keep your camera on. Now, this is exactly, by the way, so this article is really interesting because what it does is it proves the point of why executives are so concerned about this, why higher up corporate America, why the leadership in the economy is concerned about this. It says there's a slew of reasons that people are hiding their faces during meetings. This is also reported on in a previous article. It says, and now it's speaking as if they are representing the workers. They said, we're working at home, which means family members or roommates may be around. We may have to care for children or elderly parents during a phone call. Or during a Zoom call, I should say, or we may not feel comfortable showing our bedroom or a messy kitchen. Yeah, that's kind of exactly the point. Because you're supposed to be working, you're not supposed to be doing those things. So, for example, the way USA Financial handles that is we approve someone's remote workspace. But it needs to be that. It needs to be a space in their home designed for work. We don't want them at the kitchen table. We don't want them in the bedroom. We want them in an area that they can work in an undisturbed format, the way they would be working if they were in an on-site format. So remote work doesn't mean not work. Remote work doesn't mean vacation. Remote work doesn't mean part-time. Remote work means exactly what it's called. It means remote work. And if your environment isn't conducive to getting the work done, then you're in the wrong environment, and that's another problem, or is the problem in that scenario. So anyhow, then it talks about the fact, you might be joining a meeting in your pajamas, in your comfies, just after you worked out and you're all sweaty. Again, that's not how you would show up in the office. That's not how you would show up in a face-to-face meeting. That's not how you would show up in appointments. So don't show up that way on your Zoom appointments. There's a ton of common sense in here, but the younger world in particular, hasn't necessarily embraced this. But it's here, and it's here to stay. Some of the stats, check this out. That is the national average. Look at that line. Almost 100% of office occupancy levels is where we were at before the pandemic. It dropped all the way down to about, I'm going to call that 15%. It slowly edged its way up. It's currently at just under 40%. However, the further piece of that stat is the 5-day, 40-hour work weeks inside of a physical building are they are never coming back. So they go on. There's lots of things talking about all of this, but one of the last stats I want to give you, there's some graphics here. Go check this stuff out for yourself. But here's the other one that I thought really, really jumped to the attention. It's a reason I decided to have this conversation today. 96% agree that remote workers are disadvantaged compared to those in the office. Now, if you want to draw attention to yourself, if you want to build on your career, if you want to advance your space in life economically, you have to be thinking about Zoom as a live interaction. Whether I'm concentrating within a company, obviously this all applies if you're dealing with Zoom on customers. If you're speaking to customers. Now, that being said, I've had countless conversations where I'm the customer and I'm on the line with a financial institution, and 50% of the meeting who are speaking to me as the customer have their camera off. Ridiculous. What do I think they're doing? Well, the majority of the world would say they're probably not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's a very weird thing that we have to get our minds around again. We have to, now the safe bet, think of a video appointment as a live appointment and act accordingly. It's pretty much that simple. You wouldn't, if you wouldn't do it in a live meeting, don't do it on a video meeting. That's pretty much what it boils down to. And don't get caught in out of sight, out of mind. If you're already finding that economically they're telling us that remote people who have no interaction with their superiors are kind of getting overlooked now in this remote environment, then turn on your camera so that they see you, they get to know you, they can, adhere to your face and so on and so forth. That's one step in that right direction. Now, again, I will also admit that's entirely on leadership as well. Leadership has to engage those people, but some people aren't built for remote work, even if that's what they think they want. And they're probably not going to last on those teams very long. And yet they're telling us that 76%, check out that pie chart, all of that big blue, 76% of businesses, of companies, are at a hybrid level and are staying there after the pandemic. So it's no longer an issue about the pandemic. This is where the world's going. 76% of them will be hybrid. Only 9% are going to be fully remote. So again, for people who are saying, no, I want to be remote 100% of the time, well, now you've limited your opportunities down to 9% of the economy willing to work with you on that environment. Now, that's still a big chunk. 9% is a lot of business out there, but the majority are hybrid. 76% will be in a hybrid environment. And by the way, for whatever that's worth to you, USA Financial is essentially hybrid now. Our people need to come in a handful of days a week. They get to be remote the rest of the time if they so choose. But we have a space here so that 100% could be on site every day if they want to. So this is here to stay. This is where we're going to be living from now on. I spoke today primarily as if we're discussing this inside of the corporate confines of the entity you work for. However, this is also obviously applicable if you're dealing with customers outside. I think financial advisors obviously all know that. They're not going to turn off the Zoom camera if they're having a conversation with a customer. But you would be surprised how many people don't think that way. So again, stop turning off the Zoom camera. Enjoy some interaction on the video with your friends, your family, your business colleagues, and your customers.
This information is for licensed financial professionals only and is not intended for use in soliciting sales from the public. The views expressed represent the opinions of the presenter or their featured guest, not necessarily those of USA Financial or its affiliated subsidiaries. Industry references are generic and not intended to represent actions or beliefs of any individual or entity. Content is only presented to illustrate general principles, beliefs, or ideas and should not be construed as legal or regulatory advice. Trademark and copyright protected. USA Financial and Affiliates.